My name is Jason Hunt, and my life changed forever the moment I received that note. It was an ordinary morning when I was rushing to work and found an envelope taped to the windshield of my car. There was no stamp or return address on the envelope, just my name, written in neat but strange handwriting. When I opened the envelope, there was a note inside with a simple but chilling message. "You're next." At first I thought it was a cruel joke, but something in those words made my heart speed up. There was no one around, but I felt like someone was watching me. At work, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. My colleagues were busy with their own things, as usual, and no one seemed to notice my anxiety. I tried to focus on my tasks, but I couldn't get that note out of my head. During my lunch break, I decided to take a walk to a nearby cafe. On the street, among the crowd, I noticed a figure in a dark cloak standing on the opposite side of the road. The man did not move, just looked in my direction. Goosebumps ran down my spine and I quickened my pace. When I got home, I felt relief, but it didn't last long. My phone rang and an unknown number appeared on the display. I answered and a deep voice came through the receiver. "Did you get my message?" "Who is it?" I demanded an answer, but in response, I heard only a short laugh and then silence. I began to seriously worry about my safety. I should probably call the police, but I was afraid they wouldn't take me seriously. Deciding not to take any drastic action for now, I checked all the locks on the doors and windows and tried to sleep. The next morning, the news was horrific. The body of a young woman had been found in our town. Her name was Susan Price, and she lived just a few blocks from me. The police were vague about the details of the murder, but they did mention that a note had been found near the body with the same words as mine. "You're next." My heart sank. This wasn't just a prank. A real maniac was hunting me. I decided not to ignore the threat any longer and went to the police. Officer Johnson, who took my statement, looked worried, but assured me that they would do everything possible to protect me. He asked me if I had any enemies or suspicions who might wish me harm, but I could not think of anyone. Meanwhile, I began to notice more and more signs that I was being watched. Sometimes I would find things in the wrong places. One night, I heard the floorboards creak in the hallway, but I couldn't find anyone. I became more and more paranoid with each passing day. I started installing surveillance cameras all over the house, but it didn't help much. The feeling of being followed didn't go away. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, looking for familiar features in the faces of passers-by. One evening, while reviewing the camera footage, I noticed a shadow flashing outside the window. My heart started pounding. I rushed to the door but found no one. It was someone fast and careful. A week later, I found another note under the door. This time it had more text. "You are close to the truth. Don't try to hide. I am always here." I felt a cold terror. This man knew I was taking precautions. He was enjoying my fear. Everything seemed normal at the office until one day my colleague James came to work with a cut on his hand. He said it was just an accident, but I noticed the same strangeness in his eyes that I saw in the notes. I later learned that he, too, was being stalked. This is no longer a coincidence. We were both on someone's hit list. Officer Johnson and his team began a more active investigation. They interviewed all my colleagues, friends, and neighbors, but found no leads. The maniac was too careful and knew how to hide. I soon realized that I couldn't trust anyone, not even the police. This man knew everything about my steps, my plans. I began to think that there might be a traitor among those around me. I decided to take a risk. I arranged to meet Officer Johnson at a cafe on the outskirts of town, intending to tell him everything I knew and suspected. But when I arrived, the cafe was empty, and the officer was not there. Instead, I found another note on the table. "Nice try, Jason, but I'm always one step ahead." Realizing that it was not safe here, I decided to leave the city. I packed my things and left at night, hoping that the maniac would not notice my disappearance. But even on the road, in the darkness of the night, I could not shake the feeling that I was being watched. I found refuge in a small town on the other side of the state. I rented an apartment and tried to keep a low profile. However, my peace did not last long. One day at night when I returned home, I found the door ajar. My heart sank. I took out my phone and quietly approached the door, trying not to make a sound. Inside the apartment, there was chaos, as if someone had searched it in a hurry. There was another note on the table. "You can run, but you can't hide." I decided to contact the local police, but they were not as attentive as Officer Johnson. They promised to investigate, but it was clear to me that they didn't believe the threat was serious. That same night, I heard someone quietly creeping up to my window. I looked out and saw a shadow quickly disappearing into the darkness. The next day, I received an unexpected message on my phone. "I know who he is. Meet me at the old park at midnight." The message was sent from an unknown number. I doubted it, but I knew I had no choice. At midnight, I went to the park, armed with a flashlight and a baseball bat. A middle-aged man dressed in dark clothes was waiting for me in the park. He introduced himself as Mark and said that he had also become a victim of the same maniac. Mark said that the maniac chooses his victims according to a certain principle, but he did not know exactly what this principle was. He suggested that we join forces to try to catch him. We decided to set a trap. Mark suggested faking my death so that the maniac would believe that his goal had been achieved. It was a risky plan, but it was the only chance to get out of this game alive. We carefully thought out all the details and agreed on the actions. Mark arranged everything so that my death would look real. He arranged with several of his acquaintances to give false statements to the police and confirm my death. I was supposed to hide for a few days in a country house until the maniac showed himself. From my hiding place, I watched the events through the cameras Mark had installed. A few days later, we noticed suspicious activity around my old apartment. An unknown person was searching it again, as if he was looking for something specific. We decided that this was our chance. Mark was waiting for the maniac outside the apartment, armed and ready to fight. When the maniac came out of the building, Mark rushed at him and was able to disarm him. It was the same Officer Johnson I trusted. He admitted that for several years he had been hunting people he considered unworthy of life. Johnson was obsessed with his own twisted idea of justice and punished those he considered guilty of various crimes, sometimes fictitious. He found me because of an old mistake in my work that I had made years ago, which he believed had cost someone their life. Mark turned Johnson over to the police, and he was convicted of multiple murders. I returned to normal life, but the knowledge that the man I trusted was a monster has always stayed with me. I will never forget the lesson that evil can lurk behind the most innocent faces, and that one must always be on guard. Several months passed, and I began to slowly recover from the terrible events. But nightmares at night and disturbing thoughts during the day did not give me peace. I decided to move to another city and start a new life. This time I chose a small, quiet town on the West Coast. In my new place, I found a job in a small company and made new friends. Among them was Madeline, a smart and friendly woman with whom I quickly became close friends. I decided that I would not tell anyone about my past, so as not to arouse suspicion and not attract attention. One day, while walking in the park, I met an old acquaintance named Tom, whom I had not seen for many years. He was surprised by my sudden disappearance and asked what had happened to me. I briefly told him about my move, without going into details. A few weeks later, I started noticing familiar signs. A shadow outside my window, strange calls and notes. My heart sank with fear. Was it all starting again? I tried to convince myself that it was just paranoia, but my instincts told me that danger was near. I decided to share my concerns with Madeline. She listened carefully and offered to help. Together, we contacted the local police, but as before, they did not take my words seriously. Madeline suggested we do our own investigation. We began checking out all the new acquaintances, studying their biographies and pasts. We paid special attention to Tom, as his sudden appearance seemed too suspicious. Madeline was able to figure out that Tom was hiding his true identity. He was actually a former detective who had been fired for abuse of power. I began to suspect that he might be connected to the horrible events that had happened to me earlier. We started following Tom, finding out his roots and contacts. It turned out that he often met with unknown people in different parts of the city. We decided to follow him to one of these meetings. In one of the abandoned warehouses, we found Tom in the company of several people discussing some plans. We were able to take some photos and record their conversation. This was a real breakthrough in our investigation. Madeline and I, after reviewing the materials, realized that Tom was part of a group that was hunting people based on certain criteria. He was continuing Johnson's work, and I was one of their targets. We decided to hand over all the evidence to the police. hoping that now our voices would be heard. The police, having seen our evidence, finally took action. Tom and his accomplices were arrested. It was a great relief, but I knew that my safety was not yet guaranteed. After Tom's arrest, I became even more cautious. I increased security at home and at work, but I was still worried. Madeline became my main support during this difficult time. One morning, I couldn't contact Madeline. Her phone was switched off and she wasn't home. I became worried and called the police, but they couldn't find any trace of her disappearance. I began my own investigation, trying to find Madeline. I went to all the places we usually went and asked everyone we knew, but no one had seen her since our last conversation. A few days later, I found another note under my door. This time it said, "You think you got rid of us? We're still here, and we have your friend." I felt an icy hand squeeze my heart. I realized that I was a target for the hunters again. Madeline had been kidnapped, and I was their next target. I began looking for any clue that might lead me to her rescue. I remembered the recordings we made in the warehouse. Listening to them again, I found a clue to where they might have kept Madeline. It was an old factory on the outskirts of town, abandoned for years. I knew it was crazy to go there alone, but I had no choice. I armed myself and went to the factory at night, hoping to catch them by surprise and free Madeline. The factory was huge and dark. I made my way through the gloomy corridors, trying not to make a sound. Finally, I heard voices and moved closer. Tom and several others were there, discussing their plans. Madeline was tied to a chair in the corner of the room. I prepared to attack, but suddenly the police burst into the room. It turned out that they had been watching me and apparently decided to intervene at the last moment. A shootout began. In the confusion, I ran to Madeline and freed her. We ran out of the building and hid behind one of the cars while the police completed the operation. Soon, it was all over, and Tom and his accomplices were arrested. After these events, Madeline and I decided to move even further away to start a new life. We moved to another state and changed our names, hoping that we could finally find peace. Even though we had started a new life, the fear never left me. I still looked over my shoulder and checked the locks before going to bed. But now I had Madeline, and together we could handle any challenge. Several years passed, and the terrible events began to fade from my memory. But sometimes at night, I would hear sounds that would take me back to those dark days. I knew I would never be able to forget them completely. One evening, I received a letter. It had only one word: coming soon. I felt like the world was crumbling around me again. Someone was still hunting me. Madeline and I decided that we would not run away anymore. Instead, we would start our own investigation and find who was behind this. We turned to a former detective who had once helped me for help. We started digging through Johnson and Tom's old files, hoping to find something that would help us track them down. The detective was able to find several suspicious names that could be connected to their group. We realized that the group of hunters was much larger than we thought. They were active all over the country, and they had their connections in the most unexpected places. We developed a plan to expose the group. To do this, we needed to collect all the evidence and find those who could testify against them. It was a dangerous and difficult path, but we were not going to give up. We managed to find one of the former members of the group who agreed to cooperate with us. He told us about how they chose their targets and who was in charge of the whole operation. The ringleader was a man named Michael Reed, a powerful businessman who used his resources to organize the hunt. He was careful and clever, always working through intermediaries and never showing his face. Our new ally revealed that Reed held his meetings in a secret location, accessible only by invitation. Madeline, the detective, and I began planning an operation to expose Reed. This was our chance to put an end to this terrifying organization once and for all. We decided the best way to do this would be to infiltrate one of their meetings and gather evidence. Our ally helped us get fake invitations to the next meeting. It was to take place in an abandoned mansion outside the city. We prepared all the necessary equipment to record conversations and collect evidence. We arrived at the venue an hour before the meeting was scheduled to begin. The mansion was surrounded by guards, but we managed to get inside using fake passes. The atmosphere inside was tense. Everyone present seemed wary and suspicious. The meeting soon began. Michael Reed spoke to the assembled group, discussing the group's new goals and plans. We recorded his every word, hoping it would be enough to get him arrested. Suddenly, one of the men in the room noticed our equipment. Panic set in. The guards grabbed us and brought us to Reed. He looked at us with disdain and said that we would be punished for trespassing. We knew that our chances of survival were slim. As we were led to the basement, I knew I had to act. Madeline and I rushed at the guards, trying to break free. A fight broke out, and we managed to disarm several of them. The detective also did not stand aside and helped us. We got out of the basement and ran to the exit. Panic broke out in the mansion, and this played into our hands. We managed to run out into the street and hide in the forest where our ally with a car was waiting for us. We jumped into the car and drove away at full speed. We handed over the recordings and photographs to the police. This time, we had irrefutable evidence against Michael Reed and his accomplices. The police launched a large-scale operation to arrest them. Reed and his accomplices were arrested. News of the unmasking of the group of hunters spread throughout the country. People were shocked to learn that such an organization existed under their noses. The trial of Michael Reed and his group began. Madeline and I were key witnesses. The trial was long and tense, but in the end, all the guilty parties were sentenced to long prison terms. After the trial, Madeline and I decided to move again, this time to another state to start over. We changed our names and decided to forget about the past. But the lessons we learned stayed with us forever. A few years passed, and life finally began to improve. We lived in a quiet town where no one knew about our past. Madeline found a job as a teacher at a local school, and I got a job at a small construction company. Life went on as usual. We made new friends, got involved in the local community, and tried to enjoy every day. But sometimes at night I could still hear the echoes of the terrible events we had endured. To distract myself from the memories, I began exercising and volunteering. Madeline and I joined a local volunteer club, helping those in difficult situations. This helped us cope with our inner demons. One evening when I returned home, I found an envelope with no return address in the mailbox. Inside was a note. "You can't run from your past." My heart sank with fear. Was the nightmare returning? Madeline and I realized that our safety was at risk again. We increased our precautions, but we knew that it could have been anyone in our circle. We called the police, but they could do nothing without concrete evidence. I started my own investigation, trying to figure out who could have sent the note. I checked all our new acquaintances, but found nothing suspicious. Time passed, and there was no answer. One day I noticed that our neighbor, Mr. Grayson, was acting strangely. He often disappeared for several days and returned late at night. I decided to check on him when he was at work. I broke into his house and found a secret room in the basement. There were photos and notes about our lives. Grayson had been following us from the beginning. I took some photos with my phone and quickly left the house. I handed the evidence I had found to the police. This time, they couldn't ignore our situation. Grayson was arrested and confessed to being one of Reed's former group members. Grayson was sentenced to prison. Madeline and I could finally breathe a sigh of relief. All the members of the group were either arrested or in hiding. We realized that we could truly live in peace now. We decided to stay in our new home and continue the life we had started. The past no longer haunted us, and we could enjoy each day. Madeline began writing a book about our experience to share her story with others. Our past became a part of our lives, but it no longer defined them. We learned to move on and appreciate every moment. Madeline published her book, and it became a bestseller. Our story inspired many people to fight for their safety and the truth. We built a new house and started a family. The past was behind us, and now we could focus on the future. Our lives were filled with joy and peace. One day I received an invitation to speak at a conference on fighting crime. I accepted, realizing that our story could help many people avoid similar situations. My presentation went well. I shared our experiences and emphasized the importance of vigilance and fighting for the truth. Madeline supported me, and together we answered questions from the participants. At the conference, we met many people who had also gone through terrible trials. We made new friends and began to actively participate in public life. Our contribution to the fight against crime was recognized at a national level. We were invited on television to tell our story to a wider audience. This was an important step in our journey to full recovery. We continued to live our lives, enjoying every moment. The past no longer had power over us. We knew that we had overcome the most terrible trials and could now look to the future with confidence. Madeline and I began working on a new project, a book about how people can protect themselves and their loved ones from such threats. We hoped that our experiences would help others avoid such horrors. Our book was ready for publication. We sent it to the publisher and eagerly awaited the reaction. This was an important matter for us, and we hoped that the book would be useful to many. The book was published and quickly became popular. We received many letters from people thanking us for our work. This was incredibly important to us, and we felt that we had done something really useful. We decided to go on a trip to celebrate our success. It was a great way to celebrate a new chapter in our lives. We visited many beautiful places and enjoyed every moment. The trip gave us many new impressions and inspiration. We returned home full of energy and new ideas. Life continued to please us, and we were grateful for every day. We started participating in charity projects, helping those who found themselves in difficult situations. This gave us a sense of satisfaction and helped us forget about the past. Our next goal was to open a foundation that would help victims of crime and prevent similar situations. We started working on this project and were soon able to launch it. Our foundation started working and we received a lot of positive feedback. We helped people cope with difficulties and recover from terrible events. It was an important thing and we were proud of what we were doing. The foundation continued to grow and develop. We received support from many people and organizations. This gave us the strength to continue our work and help even more people. Our foundation received international recognition. We began working with organizations from other countries, exchanging experiences and helping each other. This was an important step forward. We continued to live our lives, enjoying every moment. The past no longer had power over us. We knew that we had overcome the most terrible trials and could now look to the future with confidence. But one day I received a threatening letter. It said that our past would not let us go. I realized that one of Reed's former group members was still at large and seeking revenge. We stepped up our security and contacted the police. They started an investigation, but so far they have found no leads. We knew we had to be on our guard. I started my own investigation, trying to figure out who could be behind this. I checked all our old acquaintances and found several suspicious characters. I contacted a detective who had helped us before. He agreed to help with the investigation. We began following the suspects and gathering information. We learned that one of the former members of the group, Jackson, had escaped from prison and was now seeking revenge. We knew he would act quickly and decisively. We decided to set a trap for Jackson. We spread false information about our location to lure him in. It was a risky plan, but we had no choice. Jackson fell into our trap. We managed to apprehend him before he could do anything. The police arrested him and returned him to prison. Jackson was convicted of escape and new threats. We could finally breathe easy, knowing that all the threats were behind us. We could move on with our lives without looking back. Our foundation continued to grow and develop. We helped more and more people and received support from all over the world. This was our important work, and we were proud of what we were doing. We started working on international projects, helping victims of crime in different countries. This was an important step forward, and we were proud that we could make the world a better place. We continued to live our lives, enjoying every moment. The past no longer had power over us. We knew that we had overcome the most terrible trials and could now look to the future with confidence. Life always presented new challenges, but we were ready for them. We knew that we could cope with any difficulty because we had each other's support. We started working on new projects that would help even more people. We were determined to make the world a better and safer place. Our foundation continued to grow and develop. We received support from many people and organizations. This gave us the strength to continue our work and help even more people. We received many awards and recognitions for our work. This was important to us, but the main thing was that we could actually help people. We continued to live our lives, enjoying every moment. The past no longer had power over us. We knew that we had overcome the most terrible trials and could now look to the future with confidence. We made many new friends who supported us and helped us in our work. It was important for us, and we valued each of them. We found new interests and hobbies that helped us to escape from the past and enjoy life. This was important for our inner world. We had children and enjoyed every moment with them. They were happy times, and we treasured every moment. Life always presented new challenges, but we were ready for them. We knew that we could cope with any difficulty because we had each other's support. We started working on new projects that would help even more people. We were determined to make the world a better and safer place. Our foundation continued to grow and develop. We received support from many people and organizations. This gave us the strength to continue our work and help even more people. We received many awards and recognitions for our work. This was important to us, but the main thing was that we could actually help people. We continued to live our lives, enjoying every moment. The past no longer had power over us. We knew that we had overcome the most terrible trials and could now look to the future with confidence. We made many new friends who supported us and helped us in our work. It was important for us, and we valued each of them. We found new interests and hobbies that helped us to escape from the past and enjoy life. This was important for our inner world. We had children and enjoyed every moment with them. They were happy times, and we treasured every moment. We continued to live our lives, enjoying every moment. The past no longer had power over us. We knew that we had overcome the most terrible trials and could now look to the future with confidence. Life always presented new challenges, but we were ready for them. We knew we could overcome any difficulty because we had each other's support and a strong network of friends and allies. Our foundation continued to help people around the world, and we were proud of our achievements. One day, a man we hadn't expected to see came into our office. He was a former member of Reed's group who had been released early for good behavior. His name was Peter Johnson. He said he wanted to atone for his sins and offered to help us expose the remaining members of the group. We decided to use Peter's information to strike a final blow against the remnants of the group. It was a complex and dangerous operation, but we knew it was our chance to finally end the threat. We worked with the police and other agencies to gather all the evidence we could and prepare everything we needed to make arrests. Our operation was a success. Peter provided us with valuable information that helped us arrest the last members of the group. We felt a huge sense of relief knowing that justice had been served. We could finally breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that the threat had been eliminated. Many years have passed since Madeline and I began our fight for justice and peace. Our foundation has helped thousands of people, and we are proud that we were able to make the world a little safer. Our family has grown and prospered. Our children have delighted us with their successes, and we have enjoyed every moment spent together. We had finally found the true peace and happiness we had been searching for. The past no longer had power over us. We had learned to live, to appreciate the present, and to build a future full of hope and joy. We now knew that despite all the horrors we had endured, we had emerged from them stronger and wiser. Life went on, and we were ready for any challenges it might throw at us. With a sense of closure and peace, we looked to the future with confidence and optimism, knowing that together we could overcome any difficulties.